Well, it's that time of year to add a little evil to your photos, so we're going to take a look at some Photoshop techniques to do that. Now here's a photo. Doesn't Whitson look like a nice, friendly person? We're going to change that. And here are a few ways you can do it. First, let's start with the eyes. I'm going to zoom in here and we're going to give him some evil glowing eyes. Now you can do this by using the polygonal lasso or any selection tool, but I like to use the pen to actually draw them on because it makes it easier to adjust them later, and you can change the color and do all sorts of things. So, we'll start here, and you want to start a little bit inside because you want to get the white part of the eye. You don't want to overdo it and eat into the eyelash area or anything like that. So you just start with one point, and then you just kind of draw and pull as necessary to get that eye shape just right, or at least close to it. I kind of screwed that one up there a little bit. But really, these are pretty simple shapes to accomplish with the pen tool. Got one eye. Now it's time for the other. Looking good there, Whitson. All right. And we've got two demon eyes. Move that one down a little bit, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is add some effects, and these are built right into Photoshop. So we'll start with this eye. We want to do an outer glow, but first we have to make this look more like an eye because it's technically in his head, and we just drew over some shapes, which is not terribly compelling. So we need an inner shadow, and you want to set the distance to 0 and the size to be probably 3 to 5, depending on how big the eye is. And then you see as I adjust the opacity, it sinks in a little bit. So we're just going to leave it at about 75%. It's going to depend on the photo, what you want to do, so play around with it. We also want to add an outer glow. And we want that outer glow to be white or maybe with a little bit of blue in it. And then change the size to be rather large, because we want the glow to be subtle and obvious, but not too obvious. So, you know, this is no glow, and that's a lot of glow. So we want to dial that back to, let's say, about 60%. So we've got one eye, then I can just Option, click, and drag those effects onto the other eye, so I don't have to do it twice. And now we have evil eyes on Whitson. But let's not stop there, because, you know, there's far more we can do. Let's add a little bit of blood. Coming out of his mouth, of course. So again, you can do this with the pen tool. I'm going to make a new layer. And we're going to create some blood. Now, blood is red, but it's not super red. It's a little bit brownish orange, so you might want to move up the color spectrum a little from there. And then you can just kind of draw in some blood right around the teeth. And pull that down a little bit. So okay, there, we've got a little blood coming out of his mouth. Now that doesn't look all that great at the moment because it's just a shape, just kind of like the eyes were, so we have to do a few things. We'll set it to overlay. Overlay is maybe a little too passive, so let's take a look at how hard light looks or soft light. You want to play around with the blending modes because some of them will provide you with more realistic effects. So we're going to just dump down the opacity a little bit. And also, I'm going to add a gradient overlay. Basically, turn that on. It automatically goes to, from white to black, and the blood, in theory, as it's going to be fresher coming out of the mouth than it would be down at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that because it will get darker this way, and then set the blending mode to overlay so the color changes a little bit. We don't want it to change that much, but just enough variation so it looks a bit more real. And then I'm going to add an inner shadow to that and make it really small, just so we have a little bit of change in there as well. And then some drop shadow set to overlay to darken the areas around the blood. Just a tiny, tiny bit in a subtle way. So we've got a little blood there. I'm going to bring that down a little bit more. And, you know, you'll want to probably add some more coming down the neck while we're at it. There we go. So you can see it kind of curved around his chin there, and started making its way down. We can just copy these effects back over and dial down the opacity. Now we've got some blood running out of his mouth. Should probably dirty up his teeth a little bit, and I'm just going to group these effects into a folder so we can see better and make a new layer. And now what we want to do is just put a little bit of blood spatter on his teeth, and we can do that nice and easily with a brush. So we're going to take the brush, but you want to go to your brushes panel and see what kind of spattering effects you have. Unfortunately, Photoshop comes with quite a few, so you can, have a little fun here. Now this is going to involve smaller brushes and a bit of work, so we're going to just put a little blood in a few places. You want to change the size as you go along so it doesn't look too repetitive. And right now it's not going to look very good, but we're going to do something about that in a second. So don't worry. Get that down a little bit more. There we go. And let's get some a little bit farther back in the mouth there, because that's nice. There we go. And this would clearly be a little bit more. Alright, so we've got that. I'm going to overlay that on his teeth. And I'm just going to duplicate that so it's a bit darker, and we have a little bit more control. And I have to dial that back with the eraser tool, because it looks like I got a little bit on the lip there, where I don't want it. And there are two. Okay. So we just want to, we have 2 layers of blood. We want to bring that up just enough so it's gross, but not too intense. So right about there is good. Got 2 layers. I'm going to group these. Teeth, blood. And we'll just call this one eyes and mouth grip. Very enticing. Okay, so these are a couple of things you can do, but no Halloween photo looks great when it's, normal colored like that. So we're going to do 2 things. One, new layer, create a spotlight. I'm doing that by setting these colors to black and white, top color to white, foreground to white, and background to black. And then choosing a gradient, which you can get by clicking on the paint bucket if it's selected as a paint bucket, and just choosing that, or pressing Shift-G to toggle between them. And then we're going to start by spotlighting on the area we want. So I'm going to drag out from Whitson's nose, or I should say Evil Whitson's nose at this point. Maybe a little bit more here. And then now we've got a spotlight. I'm going to choose multiply for that layer. So now we've darkened the other areas, and I'm going to create, I've now created a spotlight, but we want to brighten up the areas where he is. So I'm going to take the eraser tool and select a large eraser and just spotlight it like that. And so now we have, instead of this bright, happy photo, we have something a little bit darker. But we need to change the colors too. And to do that, we're going to need an adjustment layer. And we're going to use curves to do this. Now generally, generally you want to create something that's a little bit more blue, because that's what would happen on Halloween. And so we want to bring up the shadows as kind of blue to darken things. But we're going to actually need to bring probably the red into the highlights, but out of the shadows to give it a more darker look. But you want to play around with this, because sometimes you can find some interesting options. We want to mess with the green a little bit. See how dark we can get that. Get a nice evil kind of color scheme here. So I pulled the green down in the mids. The red up in the high levels. Shrunk it down in the lows, and the blue dominates the lows, the shadows. And so that gave it kind of a purpley blue effect. But we also probably should darken this up a little bit, so I'm just going to pull down all of the brightness on the curves a little bit. And now we've got this creepy, awful photo of Whitson. I would say that just to make it extra good, we probably could stand to make the eyes glow just a little bit more, now that we're looking at the final product. So there we go. Now I have a creepy Halloween photo that Whitson can put on his Facebook page, or send out in a Halloween party invitation, or whatever. Or just, creep out your parents or friends, or whatever you want to do. Now you have the knowledge you need to look really, really disgusting.